say about Nadav and Avihu, but I see that, there were only 3 people here, and one of them wasn't even there last week.
I saw you on YouTube because I couldn't be here.
Oh, you weren't here either, right? So but I'm going to do, with your permission, or not. I want to go through what I really had would have ordinarily done, because as I said, we did not finish with Shemot. I have a thing about Aser HaDibrot, which I'm not going to speak about now. But I think one of the most powerful reveals, that's a good word, is what I'm going to give you now. And I tell you why I say reveals. I know a lot of these shiurim, and I hear Rabbi Tal, thank God, it's wonderful. He has terrific shiurim about, as today he was speaking about what's going to be and the thing. And my focus is primarily, this is what's going to be, but I'd love to see what we have in our hands, and that is the text itself. And primarily what so many misunderstandings of the text have come around over these years. Chazal had very important reasons to say certain things, and so often that becomes the text itself, which it is not. This is basically what I say. I always start with the story that, if I were to tell the average person that, Rivka was not 3 years old necessarily when she married Yitzchak, I'd get stoned. I said, yeah. And you know what? We don't see anywhere that Abraham broke idols. Now, these are things that, of course, we learned, and most people know it's not in the Torah, but much of what we learned and we assume is correct because we've learned it is not necessarily close to the text. And if Chazal are giving us an approach different from the text, they have a very good reason. But before you understand their reason, is it not proper to read the text? What does the Torah say? And then we can say, well, why do the rabbis say it in this way? And I think almost every time, it isn't because they're saying, oh, that's not what it means this. It's not true. It means what Chazal is saying, there's another way of looking at this. And that's very important because you can't ignore, this is what the Torah says. And that's going to be what some of you already heard this lecture, but you know what's important? I'm not going to remember all of it. The story of the golden calf, the sin of Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, is one of the most completely misunderstood stories that has led us to almost ignore what the Torah says and merely accept everything that we've learned when we were young. Now, I had, therefore, prepared new source sheets. Unfortunately, I sent it to the OU and asked them to run off, and I got a call back. Sam McCarty is actually in the army now. He's going.
That's why he's not here.
Yeah, and oh, how nice of you. See, thank you. Now I don't have to open my own bottle.
On the chair?
Huh?
That help?
Okay, no, it helps more when I put it in my throat.
Amen.
I want to present to you the approach that really opened my eyes years and years ago by Menachem Liebtag, and then what I've sort of provided myself in my own studies about this story, about this event, this terrible event of the sin of the golden calf. I shouldn't say that because the golden calf didn't sin. The sin of the worship of the golden calf. And I want to open up questions and problems just by even what the text says and how we understand it, and which will, I believe, bring us to, well, let's look again what indeed the text is saying and why some of these problems really are not problems. We learn in the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Oh, did I give out these? No, I did not give out. I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, they have? Oh, okay, fine.
Do you want mine? I'll get it.
No, look, I had 8 of them over here, even more.
Thank you.
So I'll give you them.
Who's gonna do that?
Well, I got the instructions. It's okay. So the Gemara in Pesachim gives a statement in Daf Samach, I don't know, Kufbet. Says, "Ein puraniot ba al Yisrael she'ein ba ktsat miparaon avon ha'egel." We also find it in Rashi later on. Throughout history, whatever punishment we suffer has always a little bit, a grain of the punishment because of the sin of worshiping the golden calf. It's payback. It's payback. But the events that lead up to it, and the sin that itself, really leave us perplexed. So I'll explain. What exactly was the sin? And we always think, well, they worshiped the golden calf, really. Which means it was a sin of avodah zarah. But, which is the majority of our Meforshim, our Parshanim, believe that is the thing. But if so, how do we understand the challenge of understanding that behavior? The famous story that we all go crazy about. How in the world could Bnei Israel, we're talking 2-3 million people, okay? 600,000 adult males left Egypt. So let's take, you had a couple of people that weren't adults. You got equal amount, if not more, who were women. So, and so we're talking about 2 to 3 million people. So how is it that this huge group who actually went through, they experienced not one, not two, 10 plagues, miracles that were rained down upon their enemy. And they saw, the dam tzvadei akinim arov, and especially the death of the firstborn. It was this crowd who had seen the drowning of the huge military of the powerful Egyptian empire. Vayar Yisrael Mitzrayim meit al svat hayam, the Torah says. They saw them, they were dead. And they said, Vayaminu b'Hashem, they believed God. This is the 7th day of Pesach, basically. That's when it happened. So there it is, middle of Nisan, 1 month is Iyar, 1 month, next month is Sivan, the next month is Tammuz. In the middle of Tammuz, they worship the golden calf. 3 months? By the way, I just gave you those miracles. What about the miracles of bringing water when they had none and God brought it down? What about the daily miracle of the man? The manna is, but they're eating it in a manner of speaking. They actually had to live only because of the man that falls each morning. So every morning a miracle was happening, let alone the Slav when they had the quail that came over them. They saw these miracles. I can go on and on. So you mean, and then they said, oh, let's worship a God. This concept that they were worshiping God, Avodah Zarah, is difficult to understand. It's really very difficult. The whole story. How could they heard God saying in Har Sinai that you're not allowed to do this. They heard it. This was the ultimate sin, to reject God to somebody else or something else. Very difficult. And Chazal go crazy about it. They're very, very upset about this whole thing. I'm upset. It's just not logical. Not logical. And if you know the story, and I think you do, who was it who formed that golden calf? Aaron, the Kohen Gadol. You know, we have a halacha that any Kohen who works of Avodah Zarah could never become a Kohen. He could never serve in the Mishkan and in the Mikdash. And Aaron did. He still became the Kohen Gadol. But he fashioned it. You can give me all the excuses. He threw it in. It happened that way. But they came to him, and his response was, "Okay, give me a whole gold." And so he was involved here. And who was the one person who wasn't really punished? Aaron. He doesn't get a punishment. It's a very, very thing. What's going on? It's very difficult. So we have to take another view. Well, maybe the sin was not that of Avodah Zarah. But if that's true, if there wasn't idolatry, what is it that made God so angry to give these punishment? And as the Gemara says, every punishment in the whole history of Israel had a little bit of punishment because of that terrible thing. So what is it? So in order to understand that, let's see the story. And if that takes us a little more than today, then that's fine. That's fine. It's a very important thing to understand. So let's see. First source. This comes from the Torah, from Shemot, the story, how it begins. First of all, number one. Sorry. Yeah. So first of all, let's see how this happened. Well, I mean, after all, Moshe wasn't around. So what was happening? I'm giving you a little introduction. The Torah tells us why this occurred, at least the whole, who was there, who was not there. So we see that God said to Moshe, "Come up to me on the mountain," meaning at Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai, "and wait there. And I will give you the stone tablets with the teachings and commandments which I have inscribed to instruct them," meaning Israel. Meaning, this was after they heard the 10 Commandments, but have not yet received the physical thing, and they were going to receive the commandments as they are etched in stone, but they had not yet received that. And tells Moshe, "Come on up, and I'll give them to you." So Moshe and his attendant, Yoshua, get up. Moshe ascended this mountain to the top of the mountain, and he tells the elders, he had at the time no helpers in effect, we know he had 70 elders, he said, "Wait here for us until we return to you. And you have here Aaron and Hur with you. Anyone who has a legal matter can approach them. They're taking over for me." I've spoken a number of times. I've noticed that Joshua was not. The next leader of Israel was not left there for that, to the Israel. He went he was still like a student. He went up to a certain point with Moshe. But Aaron and Hur, they were there. Okay, very nice. So that's what happened. Good. First question. Next thing, and as we see next, Moshe went up to God, much of them. What did God say and Moshe say, "And I'll come back when"? When will I come back?
He never said.
He never says it. This is crucial fact number one. those who've heard this before know of all the things I said, that's the one thing I think remained with you.
You did.
What does everybody know for sure? What was the sin? Because, and Chazal say, well, Moshe said he's coming down 40 days. They miscounted it, and therefore by a half a day, and therefore that's why they did this. So between you and me, just because something was wrong with somebody's watch, God's going to punish them this awful thing? It was a mistake. They didn't they were panicked because they didn't know he was, but it was a mistake. Why was God so angry? And number two, number one, not number two. They are never told that Moshe would be there for 40 days and come down on the 40th day. Never. The text never says that. And in order to make it powerful, let's say, how long do you think he's going to have? Well, did Moshe ever go up to Har Sinai before? And the answer is, yes, he did. Before the Ten Commandments were pronounced, it says there, God says, come up, I have to talk to you. And it goes up for maybe a couple of hours. Then it comes down, it brings back the answer that the people said back to God. God said, come up, and then they come out. And he came back on a second time. So let's say it was a half a day. Let's say it was a day, say 2 days. Doesn't say the time in the Torah. Certainly wasn't a long time because it was during the same first 6 days. So he goes up, comes down in a couple of hours. Second time, same thing, right? So now he goes up a third time. He goes up a third time, and what are the people thinking? Well, he went up a couple of hours. No, last week, and let's come down in a few hours. And so they wait. Wasn't it 2 hours? 3 hours? A day. 2 days. 2 weeks. A month. And he's not there. They wait patiently for Moshe to return. They have no idea when he's going to return. And yet, they wait. And if you think they're nervous because he didn't come down, they had good reason to. He went up to Mount Sinai. God is there. He comes right down. But at this time when he goes up, how does Har Sinai look? Har Sinai, Asan Kulo. It's depicted in the Torah. That Har Sinai was smoky, was fire all over the place, and clouds, and rumbling. And it says that Moshe goes into the fire. He goes into this volcano type and walks in. Most people would survive that. In case you didn't know that. Who's going to survive that? So they see their leader going up in this unbelievable thing, very nervous, but he'll come down in an hour or two because he did last time. But now we have even worse. And he doesn't come down. So now they look at each other, not at 30 days later, but at this point already, it's approximately, we're talking about, I don't know, 7, not quite 7 weeks, we'll say, almost 6 weeks later. 6 weeks would be 42 days. This is 40 days, right? What are we going to do? What are we going to do, they wonder. Well, what are our options? 1, we'll stay where we are. We'll just stay here. For what? We've waited for 40 days. What are we supposed to do? Just do that? Option 2, we'll go back to Egypt. I know where else we're going to go. We can go back. Well, of course I don't want to do that. We have to be re-enslaved. And if we're afraid God will be angry, he'll be more angry if we go back to Egypt. Can't do that. So what's the third option? Let's go onward.
That's right.
Let's go onward. Let's travel onward to the promised land, like Hashem has told us numerous times, they think it's a great idea. Oh, wait a minute, we don't want God to be angry. But God had just told them, if you look at the third source, he says in chapter 23, which is before he goes up, he says, God says, behold, I am sending a messenger before you, he tells Israel, to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place I've made ready. If I show you in the Hebrew what, as I translate it as a messenger, it says, Hine anochi sholeach malach. What's a malach? What's a malach? A malach. An angel. It really means an agent also, but it's a number 3. So they were promised that who would lead them to the promised land? An angel or a messenger of God. Well, who's the messenger of God who's leading them? Moshe. He ain't around. How can we now go? We should go to the promised land. But God promised us to have someone who is going to lead us. That's what they said. And that is why they then did what Moshe told them to. When you have problems, go to whom? Who did he leave there? Aaron. So they said, right, Aaron. So they went to Aaron, just like Moshe told them they should do that, right? And the idea that, oh, well, they wanted to rebel against God, would they have gone and done what Moshe told them to do, go to Aaron? They're following exactly the directives they were given. Go to Aaron. And that's exactly what they did. And their complaint to Aaron was therefore not, give us another God. What did they want to replace? A new leader who would lead them to the promised land. They believed that God would lead them to a promised land, but the supposed angel or leader that God promised that we thought was Moshe clearly was not. So they go to Aaron. Sorry about your brother, but we need a leader. What should we do here? So carefully, let's read exactly in the fourth source what exactly they did say to Aaron. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered against Aaron and said to him, come, make us a God who shall go before us. For that fellow Moshe, who brought us from the land, out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him. So the fact that it says a God, so that's what made Chazal especially say, well, they wanted another God. The idea of Elohim, or as it says here, Aseh lanu Elohim, does not mean a God. The idea of Elohim does not mean gods alone. It means leaders. It means powerful people. Mi chamocha ba'elim Hashem. Does that mean, are there any gods like you, God? No, there's no other God. What is Elim? It means the powerful ones. When Bereshit, in the end of Parshat Vayetze, when Lavan chases after Yaakov, who was escaping from his home, and the night before, he catches up to Yaakov and the clan, God appears to Laban, to Lavan, and tells him, how would an Israeli say now? You better not start up with Yaakov. Don't you dare harm him. He comes the next morning, catches up to Yaakov, and he attacks him. And among the things he says, Yesh le'el yadi la'asot imachem ra. I have El. Doesn't mean God. I have the power to do something bad to you, but your God told me I can't. The idea of El or Elim does not only mean gods, or it can mean power and things. You have that also. Tehillim and everything, God sings in Elohim. He's found in Elohim as judges. It's also meant as a judges. Okay. So when they said here, does not mean make us another God. Find us another leader, is what they really were asking for. That's very, very clear. And that was no more than wanting to carry on God's plan. God did say, I'm going to send you a leader, someone who's going to lead you to the promised land. And he says it more than once. That's also in the, I didn't mention it and include it in the third one, but that's what it is. More than once, God promises, I'm going to give you a leader who will lead you. And they thought, completely logically, that leader was going to be Moshe. It seems it will not be Moshe, they now realize or think. And therefore say, okay, Aaron, we're going to you as the late Moshe has asked us to. So we got to find a leader. We got to find somebody who's going to lead us in. That's what happened. And if that's not enough to understand, what happens? What happens when that they come to him and he says, okay, give money. Yeah, Aaron was very, very clever. He knows the Jews weren't going to go for a fundraiser at this time, but they did, and they sent, they sent them a lot of gold, right? And just like let me go back half of a step. Okay, remember what they asked Aaron is, we want you to do something, Elohim, Asher Yelchu Lefanenu, who will walk in front of us, who will lead us. But that's what they wanted, not to whom we can pray. So okay, fine. So when that, however it happens, which I'll get into, that this golden calf comes out from what is done, whether it was fashioned, whether it was come from a mold, we don't know exactly, but it did happen, right? And again, why does Aaron do that? Does Aaron say, hey, cool it off, he's coming down another half hour, he'll be here? Does he argue with them? Don't worry, he's going to be here. He's a little late, he's Jewish. What can I tell you? He never argues with them. It would seem that Aaron also was wondering, isn't it? And that's why Aaron agrees to do what they want, figuring with a shrug of the shoulders, I guess this is God's way, and I don't know what. That's why he allows to do this, throw it into the fire, and this comes out. And when that happens, he provides them with whatever they wanted. He even announced, don't worry, not today, but Chag Lashem Machar. Those are crucial words. He says to the people, now that we have this golden calf, he says, Chag Lashem, let us celebrate for God. So they didn't look to replace God or deny God. They're going to actually celebrate. Chag also should mean sacrifice, for God. That's who they were worshiping. They weren't denying God. It wasn't a matter of a denying of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. That's not what was happening. And the text makes it clear if we read the text. And they said, even as powerful as these arguments are, there are also powerful arguments as to why not. Because when they have this golden calf, believe it or not, the people proclaim when they see it, they said, Eila Elohecha Yisrael asher he'elucha me'eretz Mitzrayim. This is your whatever God that took you out of Egypt. That's a powerful statement that seems to deny God. But what that meant, because everything else proves that it's not true, this is a representation of the God who took us out of Egypt. What did they know about a invisible God? I know, we know it because we know all about the invisibility. Shtuyot. There was never any belief in any God that didn't have something to see. Idols to look at. Suddenly they're told about this wonderful power who's doing all these things. But yeah, what does it look like? What is he wearing? Does he have a big hat? Does he have a long beard, a short beard? Pay us. Didn't know. What does he look like? That's what they want to know. And they accepted that so they didn't see him, fine. But they haven't seen him. They haven't seen their leader. They saw Moshe, not as God. What did they see him as correctly? God's messenger. What do they want now, therefore? God's messenger. And if they were just as if they would say, this is the man or the God's messenger who took us out of Egypt when they were pointing to Moshe. Now they have a golden calf and they said, okay, now this is it. They needed simply a representation that this must be whom God has chosen to lead them to the promised land.
But there's a huge difference between a man who's actually able to speak to God, to command the nation, and the calf that just sits there and does nothing. Right.
Well, you didn't know him personally, No, the reason is very simple. That's true. But it was thrown into a fire. Who made it come out that way? Must have been God. God has created this. That was the belief. I'm sorry, yeah.
Was this after God spoke to them on the mountain?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's after.
Exactly the point.
This brings up even more questions. I mean, I have a lot of questions on what you're saying because they felt that they had to make a leader. Since
No, they
when
didn't.
in the story have they ever done
As I
anything
brought out more than once, God told them, I'm going to make a leader for you. That leader no longer was them, for you. And malach lefanecha.
The man and Hashem did everything. Now they're taking matters into their own hands, which was a mistake. Nothing happened because of their hishtadlut.
Yes, they did. Aaron said,
I'm saying,
give me, but they went to Aaron. What should we do? He said, this is what you do. That's his tadlut. He said, give me your gold. So they did what they were told Aaron to do. And Aaron was the agent from Moshe. Moshe said, you take care of it. And he took so that was a hishtadlut. Oh, if you give me the gold, so then we'll find out who the new leader is. And when that comes out to a golden calf, they said, oh, I guess this is a new leader. Not as good looking as Moshe, but this seems to be the good leader. Now, why they end up with a calf is something I'll get to later on, but it's a totally logical thing. I can't stand there saying they were perfectly right and everything like that. But I understand the panic of 3 million people whose leader, who was doing all the miracles for them and doing everything they want for him, is now suddenly gone. And he was supposed to be the one to lead them. And they know they have to. They want to go to the whole promised land. What do we do? Oh, Aaron, the substitute. What do we do? He said, give me money. That sounds like a Jewish thing. Fine. So he gets the money. And then this comes out. So as much as you are correct in that, this was their hishtadlut. They were told by Aaron just to give in money. We take off your jewelry, give it to me. So they did. And what comes out of it? A golden calf. Why should they not think this was godly done?
What made
Aaron really dropped the ball here.
You think?
what made him think that the answer to their question was the gold?
He was Jewish. I would, yeah.
I mean, I just feel like Moshe basically put him in charge. I guess
He doesn't know what to do.
yeah, and not only does he know what to do, he really screws up, and then he.
What can you say? It's a good point you're making. What can we say to defend Aaron? I just put up hey, it's all Aaron's fault. They didn't, yeah?
One of the midrashim is that.
Don't give me a midrash.
Okay.
Think for yourself. Why do you think that Aaron might have been? Give me some excuse.
That he was
Huh?
starving.
Exactly. Right. Why did he say machar? Why didn't he do it right now?
Hoping Moshe will come back.
Exactly. He said maybe machar. So that's what Chazal, who said this 40-day thing, is saying it because he was stealing it. He was doing it figuring, number one, I imagine, they wouldn't give him the money and the gold. Then number two, when they did, he said, I don't know, I'll throw it into the fire. And then they said, okay, but something came out that he didn't imagine, So, and let me see what he tells Moshe later on, it begins to seem that. But I agree. Was he punished?
No. Well, I mean.
How many?
But you said
When they
there was
did?
something that happened.
And they were.
No. It happened afterwards. In fact, it said, in effect, Moshe prayed for Aharon that he should not be punished. In effect, also, God said, I'll give you half of your request. He has 4 sons, now we'll have 2.
It's almost also like the famous marshmallow test. It's like God puts a marshmallow in front of you and says, wait till tomorrow, not 24 hours, but later, and you get a second marshmallow if you wait. And all the toddlers.
Yeah, the same story, yeah.
And they said that actually predicates in many ways the decisions people will make.
Yeah, that's true. In a more sure way, I have $500,000 here, but if you wait, I'll give you $1 million tomorrow, right? And yet people say, I say it in a story. Oh, good news! You just won the lottery. Mm-hmm. You can get the lottery right now. It's X amount of money, but you can take it over the rest of your life. You can get much more. And the bulk of the people, almost all of them, say, what? I'll take it now.
Exactly.
I don't know if I'm going to be around tomorrow. I'll take it right
Isn't
now.
that slave thinking?
So, huh?
Isn't that slave thinking? I mean, they make a lot about how they thought like.
I want the thing now rather than do. I suppose so. We can see it as a slave thing. They don't know what's going to be. It could be. I can't deny that. But I'm saying, though, which we're not putting into this, they were 3 months after slavery, and they are panicked. What are we going to do? You have the child over here with the 2 marshmallows. It's not a matter of, okay, you had nothing to eat for the last day, and you might die, starving, so you can have a marshmallow. But if you wait, I'll give you 2 tomorrow. Then that would be a closer thing to what's happening here. Then you can't deny, oh, he just wants it now. And that's what you have to put us in that position. I don't think I would have done anything, as wonderful as I am. I wouldn't do anything different than they were doing. There's a panic going on here. Frightening. And I spent a lot of years learning about God and everything. They have 3 months.
Weren't Aaron's 2 sons killed already?
No.
That's after.
Before, that's why I told you I had said this before. That's good. Before. At any rate, so what's interesting, by the way, Menachem Liebtag does point out is that when you look at the celebration that they then because Aaron said we're going to have a celebration, right? It was almost exactly the same ceremony and celebration that they had followed 40 days earlier when they pledged, Na'aseh v'nishma, we promise we'll do anything that God has told us to do. And then it says there clearly that they accepted the Aser HaDibrot. And we said, actually, I think I put it down. Yeah, if you look at the sources, although this is a side issue, look at the sources where I see in the first source, number 5, the first paragraph, this is how they celebrated the acceptance of the 10 Commandments. Early in the morning, he set up an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for 12 tribes of Israel. It's Moshe, appointed assistants from the Israelites, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as offerings to Hashem. That happened when they accepted the 10 Commandments. What type of ceremony does Aaron have the day later after the golden calf was fashioned? And he said, okay, we're going to have a big ceremony and celebration tomorrow. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, as they had before, and that's tomorrow, okay? Next day, early next day, the same thing as it said there, early next day, people offered up burnt offerings, as they had burnt offerings there, and brought sacrifices of well-being, as they had over there. They sat down and they eat and rose to dance. So he actually built a ceremony of acceptance of God's Aser HaDibrot to be one like the acceptance of God's new leader. He made the same things, shows them it's the same thing, it's to God. That's why this is very powerful to understand. What did they do in the first time? That first ceremony after they received the Aser HaDibrot, they had what do I call it? I guess a monument to show that this is really happening, that they agreed with that. It was 12 pillars. What monument did they have the second time? The golden calf. If you see that parallel and look at it in those terms, they saw it as a what's the word I'm looking for? A worship of God. They said, we worshipped God by sending a sacrifice. The first time when we said it 3 months ago, and now we're going to thank God for this, and we'll do the same thing. But it was not denying God. It was a worship of God as they saw it. Was it a proper worship?
No, because
What do we call worship that is not proper in Hebrew? Anyone know? Avodah Zarah, exactly. So we hear, Avodah Zarah, oh, it's idolatry. Not necessarily. If you worship God not as He wants to be worshipped, that's actually alien worship. It's not the proper worship. It's avodah, that is zarah. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't the worship of worshiping God.
Like Nadav and Avihu with their age.
Okay, if you want to take that approach, that's correct also. I got news to you, the whole story of the time of the kings, especially, throughout the kings, except for maybe 3 or 4 exceptions, throughout after the death of Solomon, for example, both the northern and southern kingdoms and their kings, like I said, 90% all had worshipped on the bamot. You weren't allowed to, once the Beit HaMikdash was built, you had to only worship in the Beit HaMikdash. You're not allowed to worship outside of that. They were worshiping God, but they weren't allowed to do it on the bama, which was the sort of local, your backyard altar. That's what it was. Was it avodah zarah? Was it an idolatry? No, they were worshiping God, but that's what God wants, not the way God wants to be worshipped. God doesn't only tell you to worship Him; He also tells you how you're going to worship Me. So that's again avodah zarah. I'm sorry. Yes.
Is this like Jeroboam when he puts up in Israel when after the king was split?
Very good. Yeroboam also, when Yeroboam was the first of the northern kingdoms, he rebelled against the Davidic dynasty, And when Shlomo died, his son Rechavam took over. Yeravam, and by the way, on purpose, the Tanakh uses these two names with the two different people to confuse you, and it does it very well. Rechavam and Yeravam. Yeravam was of the northern kingdom, and Yeravam, really for political reasons, knew he had to break away from the worship of the Beit HaMikdash. Why? Where was the Beit HaMikdash?
In
In Yehuda's capital, Yerushalayim. He could now have another country and make his own capital, and then says, okay, and everybody go to Yerushalayim for davening. No. So he made himself in Dan and in Beit El, he put up two, guess what? Golden calves. Imagine that. Yeah. You think they'd find the thigh and arm and have calves. And they had two golden calves. Why? Well, this is a different shear, but since this is one, I got another 5 minutes, I can say it anyway. Why? Says Yeravam. I imagine he doesn't say that. But if I were around, I figure this is what I'd say. Hey, what are you worried about? Didn't Aaron make a golden calf? And Aaron made a golden calf. I'm just doing what was so. You know that Yeravam had two sons.
Mm-hmm.
You know what they were called? Nadav and Avihu. The exact names of, and he made himself, not just the king, but the Kohen Gadol. He himself, the leader of the religious rite as well. But he was worshiping God the wrong way. I mean, I didn't talk to God personally, but I'm sure he wasn't very happy.
But it's an important distinction.
Oh, yes. What happened is exactly what God knew would happen. We call it, and it's very common here, a slippery slope. Once they start worshiping like everybody else started worship, they started worshiping what everybody else was worshiping. That eventually happens in Achastan, the Baalim, and so on and so forth. That's exactly what God was afraid of. But at any rate, you understand now the impact of this golden calf, and how it eventually, years later, centuries later, still impacted Israel. And so now, I'm trying to show you how there are two sides to this story. The most powerful thing is that don't swallow the idea about they were told 40 days and he was not on time. Because as I said to you, they never said 40 days, and because there was a mistiming, it wouldn't be why God got so angry. We'll go into why God gets angry, but just for a moment here, I'm not going to have time for that now, but I will tell you this thing, and that is why it happened to be a calf. Why a golden calf of all things? There was an ingenious explanation given by the Chizkuni. Chizkuni, I think I have it here, points to the verse found in Shemot. There is, believe it or not, just at Har Sinai, before the golden calf and about the Aseret HaDibrot, there we read an amazing thing. Look at the sixth source. Then Moshe and Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, and 70 elders of Israel ascended. They went up part of Har Sinai, and they saw the God of Israel. They saw the God of Israel, under whose feet was the likeness of pavement of sapphire and the very sky for purity. So they saw God. Interesting. What does it mean under his feet? The Chizkuni says, you got to look in the Tanakh. Moshe saw God's glory, true, panim el panim, directly, let me say face to face. The elders now see it in a lower spiritual level, tachat raglav. It's as if they see what was under his feet.
Sidewalk.
Yeah, well, not quite. What's under God's throne? How are we supposed to know that?
The throne or footprints?
But he was sitting on the throne, so it's where his feet were.
Saw
They
the
were saying,
throne, but not God.
well, see, that's the assumption. How do I know this? It's a Haftorah for Shavuot. In the first parak of Yechezkel, Maseh Merkava, as we call it, and there we read in the seventh source, what does he see? In the center of it were figures of four creatures. That's what he saw about the throne, God's throne. And this was their appearance. They had figures of human beings. However, each had four faces. Each of them had four wings. The legs of each were fused into a single rigid leg, and the feet of each were like a single calf's hoof. So what, Chizkiyahu says, what did the Zikanim, the elders, when they said they saw God, what did they see? They saw Ulas Tachad. They saw the bottom. And what did they see? They saw calves' feet. You want to know why the golden calf that was made? They saw that as part of God, or as God's throne. And that's why they used it to represent God, who's going and who would now lead them into the promised land. I want to leave that before I told you it's going to take me more than one class. So, as troubled as you might be, I must tell you, I'm glad I'm making the trouble. I want you to see, I'm not telling you I'm right and everybody else is wrong, but rather there are different approaches. I do want you to know that the text itself never said that they knew about the 40 days. And that's a very, very powerful way of saying that the approach to say, oh, they thought it's coming back, let alone the fact that it were just a mistake they made in timing. I have a doubtful that a Rahaman, a merciful God, would be so upset. Why he will be so upset, we're going to see, please God, next week. And it'll come a little more clear to you then. I'm so glad that you came here today, and don't get angry with me.
Thank you, Rabbi.
When it says here that they went up to, was this before, before Hashem went up third time?
It was before Moshe went up for that third time to get the written or the etched Aser HaDibrot. It was either before or after the Machloket when God gave the Aser HaDibrot. But that's when it was. They were there.